Hello everyone, my name's Kathy. I'm from the Daily Marker and I'm a guest designer today on the Altenew blog. And I'm excited to show you how I created this card using some of Altenew's gorgeous flower stamps. I'm in love with them. So I made this window card with a lot of dimension. This is the stamp set that I use. There's so much variety in this set. I actually made 3 cards with this and you'll see them at the end of the video. To start, I just die cut a lot of the pieces. I wasn't sure where I was going to go. I knew I wanted to do this background, like a silhouette kind of background, and then layer something on top. I used some black fun foam. I die cut some of the black fun foam, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do, so I made a couple of these. I just used some glossy accents to glue the fun foam on. And I wanted the black so it would slightly askew so that you would see like a outline and the thickness of it. Now I have this flower. I'm not sure if I'm going to be using it, and I cut out the top one. So there's 2 thicknesses of fun foam, thin and thick. I actually like using the thin one and then making my own thick layer. If I cut, I'm not sure if it's 10 millimeter what, but it smushes. So when I die cut the thick foam, it kind of mashes it a little bit. So I prefer cutting the thin one. I think it's 3 millimeters, but don't quote me on that. I'm just guessing. So I like to just sandwich 2 of them together and get my own thickness. It's super easy to do. So once I put some glossy accents in between it, I stick it in a book and I give it a little extra time to dry. Always line up your die cut, and then this is like the perfect book to have on hand, and just give it a little time to dry and move on to the rest of your card. Now I want to show you, I'm taking this circle, the die cut that I cut out from my card panel, and I'm going to trace it with a marker and just color within that circle. I don't need to color the other areas for the background. So it's really very quick and easy. I'm adding another line to that circle that I drew just so that when you're tilting your card sideways, you don't see any white. Now it's super quick to do this. I'm outlining everything and then I'll just color in the center. However, these leaves are small. You really could just color the background, covering up the leaves, and then use a 0 to remove the color, or you could just color on top of the pink. The pink isn't a dark color, so you could do that. Now I made another card with the exact same kind of branches on the background, and I colored it blue, and you'll see that card on my blog, thedailymarker.com, or at the end of the video. And I took a chisel end and I just drew lines to color inside my circle, and then I colored the flowers, everything black, or actually I think I used a dark gray because I wanted a silhouette. On this one, I wanted a brighter card. So you can see that it doesn't matter what your coloring looks like, because I'm taking some blending solution from the Copic marker various ink. My trusty rag I've used for years and years. It's just a white rag that's dirty. Well, it just got stained with ink. And then you just dab it onto your paper and fluff the nibs and repeat. Now you'll see I set this aside and I set my foam flower on top of it, and it removes some of the ink. So that actually worked out perfect because that's where I'm going to set my die cut anyway. So I don't need to worry about that, correct it, or anything. And this is the background. So I'm just coloring a no blending, just coloring the leaves with the turquoise and the blooms with red. Now I've picked up my flower here, and this is where I'm going to do some blending. I'm starting with my lightest color here, which is R83. On my blog, I'll have a photograph of the color chart as well. And I'm picking up my medium color and putting that on top of the lightest color. I always use like a light, a medium, and dark. And they're not always from the same, usually they're not from the same color family. Now later in the video and during the coloring process, I decided to add some orange to this. I love adding orange to red, whether I'm watercoloring, using colored pencils, or Copic markers. And it gives it that little bit of interest. So I'm feathering out my colors or shading it whichever way works for you. I grabbed an RV10, which I use a lot on cheeks, and I'm just kind of blending out that lighter color. So I end up crossing my RV10 off and using an orange instead. It's always trial and error. There's no right or wrong when you're coloring. The most important thing is that you're enjoying the process. I also say it's a lot of give and take too. So sometimes you fade out those colors and you want to go back and add a little bit more of the darker color, and then you want to blend it out more with the medium color. But the most important thing is to kind of create a light spot on each petal. I call it the sweet spot, and you can use a 0 to remove some of the color if it got too dark, or just a very light color. Now I'm using 2 colors on the leaves because they're small and there's not a bunch of them. There's no point in using 3 colors. Now I die cut this top bud so I could lay it on top of the existing one. That way it would go over my card panel. I'm just going to proceed coloring the other buds and the leaves, etc. Now I've taped this onto my circle. I wasn't sure where I was going to go with this, how I was going to do the card, so I'm kind of doing it backwards. That's kind of how I operate. So I glued my die cut with my black fun foam down onto my card panel, and I'm just coloring it on top of the foam. It's actually a nice, cushy, fun surface anyway. I'm super speeding up these leaves, and then in the end I'm going to add one last color on these large leaves, YG11, and I'm just kind of want to remove some of that color with the light color that I talked about, just to kind of give it that sweet spot. Now this is the bigger flower. Oh, and it's so pretty and fun to color with. So I always like to start with my lightest color, and I'm just doing this exact same way I did the other flower. I'm being mindful of keeping a white area around the edges. It's always good to try and start that way, but it doesn't really matter. Now I've picked up my darker color, and then I'll blend that out with the medium color. Usually I like to show different ways because it's just fun to try and see a different way. So the first flower I colored the light first, and then the medium, and then the dark. On this one I did the light, now I'm doing the dark, and then I'll add the medium. So the takeaway is it doesn't matter how you do it, just so that you enjoy it. And then I'll bring in some of that orange in a little bit. A lot of people feel like they need to feather perfectly, but you really don't. If you use the right colors, the alcohol and the markers will do the blending work for you. Sometimes I like to use the feathering as an artistic touch, but a lot of times I just like to blend out the colors and let the markers do the work for me. I'm putting this on super speed here. Now some of the bottom of the flower, you can interpret it as green leaves or as the floral leaves, the petals, like duh. So I think that's kind of neat how you can do either one. So I'm interpreting these as petals of the flower. They'd look lovely colored green as well, but I just wanted more of this intense color on my flower here. So once I'm finished with this, here's the orange. Now I'm just trying to add a little bit of it, and you can actually bring it all the way into the color. It won't mess up with your coloring, and it really just gives it a nice, it just kind of makes it pop. Now you could also take a 0 and remove just an edge up along the line, but that's not necessary. If you have a heavy hand and you really saturate your colors, you could use a heat gun in between so you don't have to worry about blurry lines. Now I'm adding some of the orange to my other flower and just finishing these leaves here. This is a super easy set to color. And actually I used one of the blossoms. Well, no, it wasn't this, but never mind. Okay, anyway, I'm laying out my card. I'm seeing where I want to put that petal. Now I went ahead and I had some cardstock on my back panel, and I realized I did not like the color of the blue. So I'm taking a dark gray and I'm just coloring that light blue cardstock rather than cutting it and adding a darker cardstock, and just take that chisel end to work around the edge. And that was a super fast fix. Now I'm just gluing this down with some glossy accents. I figured where I wanted it. You'll notice I colored with the YR01 and the RV83 a strip of paper for the sentiment, and I used the rag technique on the bottom. Now I'm adding some scrap dots because the fun foam on the one flower is higher than the flower that I glued down, or whatever. There's multiple layers, so I added a lot of scrap dots to that card panel. Scrap dots are great for an application like this. Then I'm just going to set it on top of my background very gingerly and give it hours to dry. The sweet butterfly was in the stamp set, so I colored it, added some dots, and laid it on top of my sentiment strip. Super easy, multiple layers, and just lots of dimension. Here's another card I made from the same stamp set, and this was another one just with the silhouette background. I hope you picked up some tips. Thank you for watching, and there's a lot more information on my blog, thedailymarker.com. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Bye-bye.